In his 16th year in the NBA, Chris Paul is finally in the finals.
Paul's got to do something with it. Fires up a three. It's good. Paul, 8. What a connection. Paul on the drive. Layup is good.
When's the last time we've seen Chris Paul be so careless with the basketball? He's had some turnover struggles in this series.
The Milwaukee Bucks are 1 win away from their first title in 50 years and now lead 3 games to 2.
Veteran Chris Paul continues to chase that elusive championship late into his career. Paul's had an incredibly accomplished career with 10 All-NBA selections. The only other players with 10 or more All-NBA selections without an NBA title are Hall of Famers Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, and Elgin Baylor. Somebody who does have a chip would be Richard Jefferson. He's joining us now. Hello, sir. Good to see you.
Hello.
We'll get to you in just a second. Stephen A., you're up first. What's one word to describe CP3 if he loses this series?
Sad. That's the word that comes to my mind because who's not rooting for CP3? You'd be hard pressed to find people outside of Milwaukee that are not rooting for him. For 16 years, he's been one of the elite point guards this game has ever seen. This is his first NBA Finals appearance. He's up 2-0 in the finals, and now he's down 3-2. And so if he were to lose this, you're going to look at missed opportunities, no question. You're going to look at the fact that he clearly seemed hobbled, wasn't himself, wasn't 100% healthy. You're going to take all of those things into consideration along with the myriad of times that he's been plagued by injuries in his postseason career. And it's just going to really, really hit hard for a lot of people that were rooting for him. During this finals, he's averaging 21-8 on 54% shooting from the field, 52% shooting from three-point range. But still, that hasn't looked like himself. On too many occasions, shots that you thought he would make, he's missed. Turnovers over a 3-game stretch, committed 15 turnovers in 3 games. You're going to look at all of those things. You're going to wonder how close he came, but ultimately wasn't able to close the deal. And you're just going to recognize there's going to be a finality attached to it, a period, because you're not going to look at the Phoenix Suns with CP3 and say, okay, they'll be back next year. They'll win the championship next year. You're not going to feel that way. You're looking at it as this is his lone shot to capture a championship. And if he doesn't get it, he'll probably end his career devoid of a title.
Well, look, I'm going to say impressed. And the reason why, I think the true definition of a point guard, we've seen the position evolve. It used to just be a setup man. It used to just be, making sure that everybody's in the offense. But the game has evolved and the point guard position has evolved. But the true test of a point guard is, do you make your team and do you make your teammates better? And I think Chris Paul has embodied that from the moment he picked up a basketball, from the moment he entered the league. And you saw there's a list of great Hall of Famers that just didn't win a championship, whether you were losing to KD and the Warriors, whether you were losing to Shaq and Kobe. It doesn't matter. Like, you're going to run into great teams and great players on a journey to win a championship. But I think the thing that's most impressive about him is we've seen it in Houston. We've seen it in OKC. We've seen it in Phoenix. The man just understands the game of basketball at a level that is different. He raises his team. He raises players around him. And I think that's the ultimate compliment of any player. And if he wins a championship, that's a cherry on top. But I'm still just going to be impressed with what he's done over the course of his career.
But you'd be impressed anyway, Richard. The question is, if he loses the series, one word to describe him. Stephen A., you came closer. The word is tragic. Tragic, because that incorporates sadness. And this is what tragic really means. A tragedy is a story in which a hero, a heroic figure, I think Chris Paul's a heroic figure. I agree with you, Richard, about that. But is destined for sadness based on some fatal flaw. Stephen A., you've pointed out many times how small players are at a disadvantage. There has almost never been a guy, as I mentioned, under 6'4", who has won a championship as the best player on a team. Even Steph Curry in 2015, it took injuries on the other side for that to happen. It barely ever happens. And Chris Paul's, what, 6 feet tall? In the NBA, in a sport that selects out for size, really hard to lead a team as that team's best player, or along with Booker, one of the 2 best players, to a championship. And so that may be the fatal flaw that leads to sadness for the hero here. That he's destined for it, maybe. And Stephen A., you brought out how that boneheaded play, because that really was a huge blunder. 1 possession game turns into a 2 possession game with 15 seconds left because he shoves the other team's superstar while he's in the air, which is a dangerous play, and has no chance to ensure that he doesn't make the basket and puts him on the line down 3 points, which was inevitable they were going to be down 3 points. Maybe that frustration comes from the fact that it's a miracle even that he's one of the 10 to 15 best players in the world year in and year out at 6 feet tall in a land of giants. But if he loses this series as a result, especially after what happened in Game 5, the word that comes to mind for me would be tragic.
See, well, look, Max, the reason why I'm not going with this sad, crazy narrative is I truly believe the Phoenix Suns were only favored in this series because there were questions at the start of the series is because there was questions about Giannis. There were questions about Giannis, his health, would he play, would he not, and I think that's why when they talk about favorite, but I think the Milwaukee Bucks are the more talented team here, right? Like, let's make no mistake. So really and truly, are they ultimately favored in this series, even with the 2 being down 2-0, the Milwaukee Bucks were to start? The reason why I am saying impressed is because no one thought that the Phoenix Suns would be here. No one thought that the Phoenix Suns would accomplish what they accomplished all season long, let alone getting to the postseason, and he was dominant in helping his team get there. No one thought that Oklahoma City would even accomplish anything. What do I think about Chris Paul if he's not able to pull this off? I'm not going with this woe is me tragedy. I'm going to say, look, if I look at Chris Paul right now, I was impressed. You don't have to win a championship to be impressive, to gain people's respect. But what he has done in and year out, especially in these last few years at the latter part of his career, I look at Chris Paul and I'm impressed. Is that a point guard that I would want on my team? When you're talking about all the great point guards, not just overall. When you're like Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, great level point guards, and you're like, look, Chris Paul's impressive. At the end of the day, whether his body holds up, he's had some bad luck, but I'm impressed with the way he handles himself year in and year out.
Well, that's us. But, RJ, most of the public is not going to view it that way. You're absolutely right in terms of how you look at it, how I look at it. But when we ask a question like this, we're really talking about what because, again, the average viewer doesn't get to just come on national TV and speak and articulate and eloquent their thought process. We have to do that for them. And so when we're speaking about what the vast majority of the public is going to look at when they look at CP3. We recognize the fact that the only reason they were considered favorites was because of the questionable health of Giannis Antetokounmpo after he had twisted his leg or his knee, messed his knee up, hyperextended his left knee so badly, his right knee, I believe, against Atlanta in the conference finals. We recognize that. But nevertheless, we've seen Phoenix have opportunities in this series. And even though we've seen CP3 put up numbers, I mean, when you're averaging 21 and nearly 9 assists a game on 54% shooting and 52% from three-point range, that's impressive. But obviously more is needed to upend the Milwaukee Bucks. And because of his inability to do more, particularly at key moments in the series, particularly a 3-game stretch when he committed 15 turnovers, and we all knew that he was not 100%. He just wasn't healthy. There's no way in hell that CP3 is turning the ball over 15 times in 3 games. That's just not who he is. Ultimately, those nuances are things that people will recall, but in the end, when we look at him, and which is why the word sad comes to my mind, is that if he were to lose, there's none of us that's going to look at the Phoenix Suns and say, they'll be back next year. Not with the Lakers coming back, not with the Clippers coming back, not with what you see out west, not with Milwaukee having won a title, not with Kyrie, KD, and Harden in Brooklyn, not with Philadelphia if they modify some things there or get Ben Simmons. I heard Doc Rivers and the 76ers got a shooting coach for Ben Simmons and stuff like that. We'll see what that materializes into. There's so many good teams. You look at Phoenix and you just say, this might have been their shot. This might have been CP3's shot. And that's where the word sad comes in. You're just going to look at it and say, hey, He might have missed it.
Of course. Yeah, because there's incredible opportunity, but the COVID, and if his hand is hurt, can't really blame him. All right, RJ, appreciate you. We will talk to you soon. When we come back here on First Take some NFL, gentlemen, Tom Brady returning to Foxborough this season. First Take will be there for all that good stuff. We already got one Pat